Hello and welcome to the actual currently unnamed movie podcast where we actually talk about movies for once. I'm Oscar, with me is my co host Carl,
Hello.
and today we finally get to talk a bit more structured about movies. And for this, we chose Drunken Angel by Akira Kurosawa. If you have listened to prior episodes of the podcast or know me at all, you'll know I'm very passionate about Japanese film and Akira Kurosawa as the biggest Japanese director in the history of film, with like critical acclaim on a global scale. Um, yeah, I showed the movie to Carl and others a while ago, and Carl was like, "Yeah, we can talk about that. That sounds cool. That's a cool film." Um, so yeah, Carl, do you want to start on like what's the film about? Give us a synopsis.
Yeah, definitely. As Asuka said, it's by Akira Kurosawa. If you've listened to the episode about Japanese film history, we did talk a bit about him in that episode. It's a movie essentially about um, a. Is there a word for someone who's a member of the Yakuza? A Yakuzaite?
I think they're just called Yakuza.
Oh yeah. It's about a Yakuza played by Toshiro Mifune, who stumbles into the clinic of our other protagonist, played by Takashi Shimura, who is an alcoholic quack doctor type character. The Yakuza, called Matsunaga, gets help removing a bullet from his hand, and also he figures out from the doctor that he has tuberculosis. The rest of the movie kind of is about the doctor hassling the Yakuza to take care of himself and get his tuberculosis treated. The Yakuza kind of, um, you know, shoving it under the rug, pretending it doesn't exist, eventually having to face up to it. And at the same time, you have all the goings on around in this city where the doctor is an alcoholic. He's occasionally looked down upon by other members of the society. He has an old classmate who is far more successful than he is. Um, you get a look into some other people in the town. A girl who is being taken care of by the doctor. A girl who is a server at um, a sake place. You get to look into the goings on in the yakuza kind of lifestyle that Matsunaga finds himself in. Um, and yeah, and that's essentially what the movie is about. There's some more to it with like rivalries in the Yakuza and an eventual showdown between Matsunaga and another Yakuza. But for the most part, it's a movie about a doctor and his patient.
Yep. It's very much about toxic masculinity, right? With
Yeah.
Matsunaga not admitting that he might be sick, that he is actually in danger of dying, even. Um, and it's a film about post-war Japan because it came out in 1949, and we really have this like society that is just like kind of crumbling. Which, as you mentioned, it really works by showing us all these different people. And it's I like that the actual like plot of the film isn't the doctor and the yakuza, but like what later actually becomes important is the girl he takes care of and the other yakuza who comes out of prison, who has
Yeah.
a relationship to that girl, and that's like more the focus in the later half. I really like that the focus isn't just on the doctor and the patient.
Yeah, definitely. It's more of it's a central aspect of the film is the interactions and like back and forth between these two characters, but they're also shown to be just two people in a much larger story, I suppose.
Mm.
Um, the doctor, of course, gets involved with the Yakuza world, but he isn't integral to it,
Mm.
right? Like, And even at the end of the movie, the it's not like they've defeated the Yakuza or anything like that. We've just seen a small look into what life is like in this town.
Hmm.
The movie immediately stuck out as a movie that you can say a lot about. I think that pretty much every scene has thought put into it and pushes the movie forward in one way or another. And in general, I just think it's a very well executed film, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the reason why I showed you and the others the movie is because I was planning to write a term paper about it. So I had to rewatch it myself. And, I like talking about those films with people. And yeah, it's like very much, it's not a very like artsy film. Right, like, I mean, you can overanalyze anything, but it doesn't like stand out as something that wants to be overanalyzed to find enjoyment out of. Right,
Yeah,
overanalyzed is of course not meant as a derogatory term here. um, but you can also just watch a thing like, yeah, Toshiro Mifune is really hot, and like, enjoy it that way.
yeah. His suit is too big though.
That is true. That is indeed true. He wears a suit that is too big, though that might have been in fashion.
I think especially in comparison to another movie we watched around that time, The Red Spectacles,
Mm.
which again, not knocking the movie, but it's one of those films where if you're not constantly thinking about it as you're watching it, I feel it's very hard to keep up with it. You know, it's very hard to make much sense of it
Mm.
because the narrative isn't really the focus of it all.
It's a very different strand of Japanese film.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Red Spectacle by Mamoru Oshii is sure is a film.
yeah. And in comparison, this movie, um, like I said, you can say a lot about it. You can look into a lot of things about it. And I do find enjoyment in that, but it's also a film with a relatively simple narrative. It's you know, a noir film
Mm.
that's about the Yakuza, and it's kind of dark at times. It's kind of brighter at times. It has a showdown at the end. You know, it's got all the makings of an easy to follow movie
Mm.
structure, and it's also an hour and 30 minutes, which is the optimal movie time.
It's true. I think it's also interesting that, yeah, sure, like it's heavily inspired by noir. You see that, like, that's also interesting because Kurosawa went away from that a bit. It's also a Yakuza film, though the Yakuza genre of films itself didn't really start until the 70s in Japan. I don't know if it's because, like, people were more afraid of the Yakuza and were like, we can't show them right in like any bad light. They're gonna like kill us.
Yeah,
Or whether it was just like, oh yeah, the normal people have nothing to do with the Yakuza, so they don't care about that theme. I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna make any assumptions here, but it's definitely true that there were less Yakuza films than later. I don't know if, I mean, there were probably some beforehand, but that's pretty interesting, I think. And then also just seeing Kurosawa's genealogy, like how he changes, because this is the last or second to last film before Rashomon in 1950, which brought Kurosawa into the spotlight of the whole world, winning an award at the Venice Film Festival. And then suddenly all the Europeans and Americans were like, wait, the Japanese make movies and they're good?
yeah.
And right, so Drunken Angel is still before that. And I think that's pretty neat to look at. Um, we'll talk about that a bit later, I think.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. Just like the differences to like other films, to Kurosawa films, to like Hollywood films. I want to talk about that later, but I think, yeah, that's good for later bits of the podcast.
Absolutely.
What I like about the film is there's like a water hole right in front of Sanada's clinic, which I am writing a term paper about, just about the way that the water hole is used, because it's really cool. The film starts and ends on the water hole, so it's obviously important.
Yeah.
And so I'm just analyzing a bit how it's used as like its own character and stuff like that, how it thematically ties into that stuff. And there's a lot there. So it's like it is definitely a film you can like think about so much.
Yeah, but also, like, it also has a more literal meaning, right, in the
Mm,
movie. It's not something that you'll come out of the movie and you'll be like, I really didn't get what they were trying to do with this. Any part with the watering hole made zero sense to me, and because of
mm.
that, my enjoyment is impaired. Even if you don't think about the water hole, you'll come out of it like, yeah, those kids probably shouldn't have bathed in the water hole because it's toxic. I
Yeah,
agree.
like this is actually something a prof told my prof told me about when I talked to him about the term paper, and he was like, "Yeah, it's actually interesting. They had like a water hole in front of their apartment complex, right, just like in Germany, so like regularly tempered, and they were like, oh yeah, they checked it out, and there were actually mosquitoes there that like couldn't exist in Germany, just because this like water hole like just standing there for like a few weeks because you can't just like take a bucket and get out all the water,
Yeah.
um and like yeah, that was just like a breeding ground for stuff that does not exist in Germany.
Yeah, so you have this water hole that's uh it's filled with sludge and it's bubbling and it's
Mm,
just disgusting um throughout the movie, and you can watch the entire movie without thinking for 1 second about the watering hole, and you'll still get the gist of what was going on, right? You can even focus
mm,
on other aspects of the movie, character interactions, parallels, shot composition, stuff like that. But also, there's enough there for Asuka to write an entire paper on it, right? There's enough there for you to start thinking about it, probably analyze it from several different angles.
mm.
Is it a metaphor for, the alcoholism that's a common theme in the movie? Is it a metaphor for being stuck in the Yakuza, being unable to escape? Is it a
Mm.
metaphor for how the town is becoming worse with time? There's a lot of angles you can attack it from.
Yeah, definitely. See, we should have taken more notes, indeed. But yeah, I do love how the water hole, like everyone has a different relationship to it too, right? Like the dog is like a guardian who keeps the people safe from it. His clinic
Yeah.
is like right in front of it, right? And I think the only person who really does not give a shit about it is Okada, the yakuza,
Yeah.
like the antagonist who comes out, who actually throws rocks into it. It's like that's just a cool symbol.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also a bunch of cool imagery tied to it. The flower going into it,
Mm, yeah,
um, the
that's my favorite
close-ups.
shot.
Yeah, yeah, I know. The close-ups of it bubbling,
Yeah.
um, the which is also what the opening credits is set to
Mm.
as a back piece. It's a nice piece of the set in general.
Yeah, there's also I'm not entirely sure anymore, but like all, if not most, of the music is shit. I forgot the word. It's in universe.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's in the movie.
it's
There's
like
a guy
yeah,
playing guitar.
yeah. It's placed in the world. Like there is no soundtrack playing over it. If it is someone playing guitar or they are at a dance hall, right? That kind of music. The one song they play at the dance hall owns, by the way, where they're just like, wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
It's
It's
good,
pretty good.
good, chunky stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that I forgot the word because it's like one of my favorite words in film analysis.
We'll put it in the description.
Yeah, and yeah, most music, as I said, is at the water hole or at the dance hall, so it, like connects those two as well. It's
Yeah.
just so cool. Like as you said before, every shot, everything just feels deliberate, right? Feels intentional
Yeah.
that there is something there.
Yeah, that's one of the things with this movie that really stuck out to me is like you said, everything feels deliberate. Not a moment feels wasted or like it could have been cut from the movie or like there isn't anything of substance there. Like everything feels like it was done, like Kurosawa was like, this ties into what I'm trying to convey in
Mm,
some way, shape, or form.
yeah.
And I respect that a lot.
Mm.
The music thing in particular as well, now that you mention it, one of my favorite parts of the movie is when the antagonist of the movie, he's been released from prison and he starts playing the guitar.
Mm.
And it's this kind of ominous tune. And they ask him, what's the name of the song? And he goes, it's the killer's anthem. Which, that's like looking right at the camera kind of stuff. But because of the way they've set up the movie, or the music in the movie, it works that way.
Yeah. The term I was looking for is diegetic, by the way.
Diegetic.
Yeah, diegetic music is music that exists in, like, is rooted in the universe. Um, a side note, yeah, no, like, I think Okada's introduction in general is really cool. Like that stuff. I love how the Doctor Sanada, how he hates the Yakuza from the start, but we don't know why.
Yeah,
And it's never said, oh, he hates them because he's taking care of this girl who was like, well, I mean, we can say she was like abused by, like, it's not said what happened, but she is definitely afraid of him, and they
yeah.
did. So,
She was
right,
in his clutches, more or less.
yeah, and so, right, it's like that comes out later without being deliberately said.
Yeah. The movie is very good at like, show don't tell, that
Mm,
kind of thing. Um, a lot of things about the character, you need to do a little bit of reading into them to fully understand why they're behaving like they are. No one outwardly states their motivations,
mm.
which is kind of a nice breath of fresh air in comparison to other things I've watched recently.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we can get into this, right? Because I want to ask you what, like, stands out for you in contrast to Hollywood films. I don't know how many Hollywood films of the 40s and 50s you've seen. Probably not that many.
Probably zero is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, probably like it starts with New Hollywood then instead, from like
Yeah.
the 70s
Um,
onward. But like generally, like even to modern Hollywood films, like anything that, as you just mentioned, the stuff that it's not deliberately said everything, right?
yeah.
It,
Probably my favorite part of the movie is the character interactions between the doctor character and the Yakuza character.
mm,
And that's because almost every conversation they have, there's a literal interpretation of it, which is the doctor. He's kind of gruff and rougher on the edges, and the Yakuza is kind of, um, cocky and bratty and selfish and scared, of course. But there's also more to it. Like, my interpretation of a lot of the conversations comes down to when the doctor character is speaking, condescendingly, or like he's parenting the Yakuza character. It's almost like he's also speaking to himself, right?
mm,
Um, he because he can be really mean. um, he can call him a coward, say, you're stuck in the Yakuza and you need to leave it because you have other things and you're ruining your life.
mm,
But he has the same relationship to alcohol, right? And he goes around telling other characters, this is just the way I am, this is my nature.
yeah,
And the movie never like, in a modern movie, especially a Hollywood movie, you would have a close up of the doctor's face where he goes, he's just like me.
just like
We are
for
the
real, for real.
same. We are not we are not so different, you and I. Um, and we do get a line where he goes like, "Oh, he reminds me of myself when I was younger,"
Mm,
uh, and that's what pisses me off or whatever. But kind of between the lines is that he hasn't changed a whole lot, or he still sees himself the same way. And it's only other characters that can tell him the good aspects of himself.
mm,
Um, he's got a little girl who he's treating her tuberculosis, and she's fighting through it.
mm,
And he tells the yakuza that that girl is so much stronger than you because she's fighting on and she's staying positive in spite of it all. Um, and she's working her way through her tuberculosis as well, which, what he's saying definitely applies to the yakuza. He's afraid of going to the doctor. He's afraid of the truth that he is dying. But it also applies to the Doctor himself, you know? He
Mm.
is a character who is capable of being better than he is. And he definitely is capable of getting out of this rut that he's in, but he doesn't. And I find that kind of thing really interesting. And I think the fact that they leave so much unsaid does a lot for it. And that's something that you wouldn't see that often nowadays, I think.
Yeah, in general, like the MO of original Hollywood was like, this is entertainment, not art. Of course, you cannot
Yeah.
differentiate the two, right? Like, even I'm not even gonna go into anything with regards to Hollywood films, art or not. They are art. Who cares? Like,
Yeah.
whatever. But like the original idea between Hollywood was really to make it like as simple and straightforward as humanly possible, right? Like, you could not have any cuts that like weren't like very intuitive or like invisible, right? That you don't notice that they cut, and everything had to be like laid out. And of course, you couldn't kiss unless characters couldn't kiss unless they are married. But you know,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, we don't have that as much in Japanese film. I feel like Japanese film also had a very it's very inspired by Hollywood film, of course, and there's also a lot of just like feel good family dramas or stuff like that. Um, but especially after the Second World War, it's a bit more like critical, right? A bit more you can do stuff with film, and
Yeah.
I think that's really neat. And yeah, the same problem still plagues Hollywood to this day in a bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a bit like yeah, also just like there's a lot of stuff that is like not unnecessary, but it pads out the film, right? There's shots because you need to see all the actors in the same room,
Yeah.
uh, rather than like it actually adding anything to the narrative.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I would say there's also obviously I don't know anything about Hollywood from this day and age, but um, the narrative has definitely taken a prevalence in filmmaking,
Mhm.
um, modern day filmmaking, I guess, or more Hollywood style filmmaking. That I think obviously is appealing to a larger audience, but it can be annoying when a movie seems focused entirely on what it's literally about and so little about what it's figuratively about or what you could read between the lines. Like the narrative in this movie isn't, um, it's not large or involved or complicated, right? If you just break down this movie based on what happens, it's a guy goes to a doctor, he's diagnosed with tuberculosis, he gets used by the Yakuza and then he dies.
Yep, it's. I also like. I think you're like the viewer is led on the wrong foot from the start and then surprised because the like all the posters and stuff show Toshiro Mifune, and like especially if you're coming from Hollywood, you're also expecting this to be a film about Mifune because he's like the young attractive man, right?
Yeah.
But the titular Drunken Angel is the doctor, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And just like getting to that point is like a kind of aha moment that like the doctor is actually again he's not in the center of the film, right? He's not important to the Yakuza part of the plot, but he
Yeah.
is in this like it's really not that straightforward, just a thing, right? And that's really cool.
Yeah, I also love the I guess it's a subversion that, you know, the climax of the movie isn't Mifune having this uh badass action hero moment.
Mm,
It's a man who's on the verge of death, um, almost pathetically trying to take down the man that he sees as the reason that everything's gone to shit, right? Or
yeah.
that he sees as the evil. And then um, you know, being unsuccessful, getting shanked in the side of the stomach, and the cycle kind of resets with the bad man going back to jail, but you know, he's surely going to be let out soon.
Mm,
And yeah, it kind of fits into the whole, I guess, anti yakuza message of it all. That you know he put his entire life into the Yakuza and then he dies uh, fairly pathetically. And the only people who actually remember him towards the end is the doctor who desperately tried to get him to leave and the girl who desperately tried to get him to leave.
Yeah. There were also like the protagonist dying is a very noir kind of thing, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like we've got the femme fatale who like ultimately causes his death in a way. Like, she's not as important, but the girl that leaves him for the other yakuza.
Yeah.
But I do like that. Like obviously he fails in like killing Okada, but he succeeds in like saving the girl that the doctor is taking care of in a way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
that's definitely true.
so
Um,
that's also like an interesting thing about Kurosawa, right? Because Kurosawa is neither an optimist nor a pessimist in his films, but he has like both in like basically all his films, right? And yeah, we can see that in this film. Like it's generally a very pessimistic film, of course, like ruined post-war Japan. Dude is dying of tuberculosis, and his life is going to ruins. But then we've also got like yeah, in the end, like the girl, the assistant to the doctor, she's safe from Okada again. And there's the younger girl who fights against tuberculosis. She won the fight, right? So like, but at
yeah,
the same time, of course, like Matsunaga dies.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, there's a lot of it that's also more like kind of something to think about rather than the director saying, this is how the world is.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. That's like again why I wanted to talk about it is there's so much you can say about so much of the movie, and it's obvious that Kurosawa wasn't like this is the proper reading or this is the correct
Mm.
reading or there's only one reason that this is in the movie.
Yeah. I also love that because we don't have that have like strict notes what we want to say, right? And I feel like we'd get to like completely different paths to our conclusion if we had started with a different word at the beginning,
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because obviously we're super chaotic here, but their way of thinking about
Absolutely.
films is just interesting.
Yeah. I also like the usage of tuberculosis, especially because obviously it was a very current thing.
Mm,
But it is a nice parallel as well to um, just like linguistically, the things that happen to you when you have tuberculosis are nice to use when you want to parallel other things. Like there's a quote from the movie um, where after Matsunaga is diagnosed with the tuberculosis, they establish that he's got a massive hole
mm.
in his lung, right? But they say chest, and they say, with that hole in your chest, um, drinking is equals suicide.
So what you're saying is he's a hollow from Bleach.
Exactly. That's the expanded universe of Akira Kurosawa films. No,
Yeah, we
um,
need a Bleach adaptation with Ukiura played by Toshiro Mifune.
yeah, but obviously, like that is very much a speech that's written like that in order to parallel, you know, someone having heartache or heartbreak.
Yeah, like just generally like emptiness
You've got a hole
inside,
in your
right?
chest,
Yeah, like something's
and
missing.
if yeah, there's something missing, and if you drink, that's equal to suicide. Um, and obviously, the uh, titular character, the drunken angel, the doctor, he drinks, and he has a hole in his chest, but in a more figurative sense.
Mm,
And that's a nice touch. That's another one of those things that it feels deliberate that
mm.
it is tuberculosis and that he's written the lines the way that he has.
Yep. I don't actually know if he's the writer for that film. Have you? I mean, he probably did write it. He does do a lot on his own films.
He probably was involved at least.
Yeah. Hang on. Quickly checking. Yeah, he did. He did write it.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I do also like the boss at the end being like, yeah, once they cough up blood, they are wild cards you can use. And like,
Yeah,
obviously, coughing up blood is like something you in general use for someone who is like gravely sick and about to die. But
yeah,
also, he's like literally coughing up blood.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, tuberculosis is also just like a really scary disease in general,
Mm.
and it makes for some nice imagery.
Mm.
It's like something that you can only defeat by really fighting hard and doing your best. And they say, a rational mindset is the only way to defeat tuberculosis. And the doctor at the end says a rational mindset is the only way to conquer life or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, and just the set of characters in the movie, and especially the main two, I found were probably my favorite part of the movie. Seeing them bounce back and forth. There's also some fun acting between them. They get into fistfights a bunch. There's the whole, it ties into, I guess, the theme of toxic masculinity again, that they can't properly converse with each other.
Yeah.
Um, the doctor always feels the need to put him down because of his choices in life, and the Yakuza constantly feels the need to, make himself look big and in charge, and he can't take criticism without getting violent and things like that.
That's why he wears a suit that is too big. For one, because he wants to look bigger, and because he can't take anyone telling him it looks shite.
Yeah, that's probably the case. Maybe even in real life, maybe they were like, "Excuse me, Mister Mifuna, you kind of look like ass in that," and he just
Mm.
beat the shit out of them.
Yeah. To be beat the shit out of by Toshiro Mifune. I mean, what?
I don't think he looks that good.
I do.
Yeah,
I
I
think
know.
he's very attractive in that film. It's unfortunate that later Kurosawa would just make him take gremlin roles most of the time.
No, I love that the gremlinification of Toshiro
Yeah.
Mifuna.
And then later he's too old to be like hot, hot. Then he becomes Karl Marx.
Oh hell yeah!
In the film Red Beard, which is about a socialist doctor.
Oh hell yeah!
It's a good film.
Base.
Sadly, not 90 minutes long, which is the perfect length for a film, but it's a good film.
Yeah, alcohol is also like not just in the doctor character; it's a major theme of the movie itself.
Hmm.
Um, Probably my favorite scene, like visually, is when Matsunaga has been told to not drink alcohol because he'll die.
Hmm.
And he just does his usual, walk throughout the town. And everywhere he goes, he's someone puts down a bottle of alcohol for him,
Hmm.
or wants him to drink, and he says no every time, until he feels forced because of his yakuza ways.
Yeah.
And just purely on a visual level, that says so much about society in general at that time, where everywhere he goes, someone pulls out the bottle, and this happens throughout the movie as well. Like there's always alcohol involved, regardless of the scene,
Hmm.
and just the constant presence, even without someone saying. Like again, that's another thing. With like, if this was a Hollywood movie, they would like, they'd be like, "Oh, I have your special favorite sake here," and there's a close-up shot of the bottle, and they put it down on the table, and he's like, "No, I cannot drink it because then I will die."
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, but what's life without alcohol?" Wink.
Yep. Yeah. My favorite shot, as mentioned before, is the flower Matsunaga throws into the water hole when he meets Okada, because like it's just so fully charged with symbolism. Like the flower is like whenever he goes through town, he like just picks up a flower at a flower shop, and because he's like the boss of that area, they don't charge him anything for it.
Yeah,
So he always has those flowers in his suit and stuff. And once Okada shows up, he's like throwing it away because he doesn't need it. Red Tea goes drinking with Okada, throws it into the water hole, and you see it like being basically swallowed up by the hole. And that like symbolizes his position in the Yakuza, because as soon as Okada shows up, he loses his rank, right?
Yeah.
He loses respect. Everyone likes Okada more, and then later he wants to pick up a flower again, but the flower shopkeeper is like, "No, you have to pay for that. We were told that you don't have anything to say anymore.
Yeah.
You need to." And that's like the point where he realizes that he's being thrown out, and yeah, so that's why I just really like that shot a lot.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And this whole like taking flowers for free thing is also something he does at several points in the movie. So
Yeah, yeah,
it
exactly. It's
already
like,
has it set up as like, and then when he tries to do it again and he's denied, you instantly go, "Oh, something's up," right?
yeah,
Because I already know that he can usually get this for free and that people usually respect him or whatever.
yep.
Yeah. Um, but on the subject of the sludge or the watering hole, should we move on to a discussion about that in particular? Because, like you mentioned, you have been working on a thesis paper about that in particular.
Mhm. Yeah. So my thesis is basically that Kurosawa uses the whole to mirror the society at the time, to mirror like the characters, uh, mainly Sanada and Matsunaga, the two central characters, and basically the waterhole takes on its own character. It becomes its own character through like use of camera and stuff. Important for that is, of course, that the film starts on the and ends on the waterhole, as I mentioned before. That, that's what they say. Both at the beginning and the ending are paramount. There's a reason why you show what you show first,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
where like even the first shot, it's like in the classic style, credits at the beginning, and the background is the watering hole. First a close up with like bubbles coming out. The second shot is actually like a more distance shot, and this is something you can easily miss, but in the water hole, you see the clinic reflected.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I
that's
did
something.
miss that.
Yeah, that's something I missed the first two times I watched the film. Um, the water hole is always present in the clinic. At the beginning, when Matsunaga first visits Sanada, Sanada is like, "Ah, there's damn mosquitoes, right? uh, Even get into the clinic." So the reach of the swamp extends. You can see it from like his window. You can see it from his like living room when he later gets drunk. Obviously, there's always the musician who's at the waterhole, who you can hear, even like when you don't see the waterhole. Um, yeah, that's like basically all the gist of stuff I'm analyzing about it. As I mentioned before, it mirrors Okada's, no, Matsunaga's place in society. He loses his rank when the waterhole takes the flower. Okada, the later Yakuza, doesn't care about the waterhole. He disrespects it as like the only character in the entire film, which shows us what he's all about. Yeah, that's yeah. Sanada obviously takes a more like guardian approach. He like shoos the children away who are playing at the waterhole because it's dangerous to play there.
Yeah,
And another thing I really like is that the girl who works at the sake restaurant, who wants like to leave the town with Matsunaga, who wants to go to her hometown, she mentions that a beautiful stream runs through the village, and that is obviously also like, the contrast to the shitty waterhole
yeah,
that this village has.
yeah, definitely. I do like a lot the imagery of the watering hole or the water hole as sort of a stand-in for the yakuza.
Mm,
With the um, Matsunaga represented by the flower, kind of drowning in it,
mm,
um, stuff like that. Uh, because that also kind of gives another reading to the part where the doctor character is shooing the children away from the watering hole because
mm,
he also, although it hasn't been established yet by that point, he has a disdain for the yakuza, and he says to the children, if you're in there, you'll get typhus. I think he says, Um,
Mm.
you'll get this sickness, um, the same sickness that Matsunaga has. Not in a literal sense, but if you consider the yakuza as a sort of sickness or something bad that you get stuck in.
Mm. Yeah.
It's also I think when the oh, what was his name? The big bad guy, Okada?
Okada.
Yeah. When he returns, he kind of looks at the water hole and uh what is it he says? That is like it's the only thing that's remained the same or whatever.
Something like that.
Yeah. Which is like this has been a thing that's been festering in this place for so long.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to have been in prison for like 3 years or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah. Like obviously lots of changes, right? Like after Second World War, everything changes except the
Except the
sickness.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely like yeah, it's prevalent imagery. It's in so many scenes, just in the background,
Mm.
or as you said, like even the part where you can see the reflection. Um, it's clear that a lot of thought has went into it. It's a it's a nice bit of symbolism.
Yeah.
And again, there's more readings of it than just as a representation of the yakuza or whatever.
Yep. I think at the end, I do also want to talk a bit about Kurosawa because I know you haven't seen any other Kurosawa films.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, I always want people to watch Kurosawa films.
Yeah,
So, like, as a bit of a heads up, how does this tie into Kurosawa? Um, so Kurosawa, things he really likes is to use nature. In this time, we have the waterfall, right? He really uses it's heavy rain and stuff. We've even got some heavy rain important as like in that film as like a symbol. He's has this like humanist but both optimistic and pessimistic approach that he has. One thing Drunken Angel is missing that starts with Rashomon and carried through the rest of his career is a very dynamic camera. Like it's the camera moves a lot with characters and everything. It's very fun to watch. Like I think this film still has a bit. It's good that it's not longer than 90 minutes because it would like start to drag itself down a bit.
yeah,
But even his later 3 hour films, you can watch those because it always feels like it's moving, um, like things are happening. And yeah, generally, people sometimes say that Kurosawa makes like foreign films in Japan or films for the world. But Kurosawa himself and like many critics say that it's more he still does very much Japanese film, but he does it for the world.
yeah.
Um, so it's a good entry point into Japanese film.
Yeah. I'm definitely interested in watching more Kurosawa and of course also talking about it on the podcast.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I thought this one was approachable. I'm usually not a person who uh, I like literally analysis and movie analysis and things like that, but I'm not very good at it yet because
Yeah,
I haven't consumed a whole ton of movies, right? Especially historical movies or more impactful movies. And so I
yeah,
thought that as something that's just approachable on many different levels, this movie was really fun to watch. Someone who isn't me could come out of this movie having focused on entirely different parts, having entirely different readings of it all,
mm,
pretty much regardless of how much they love film, right? Um, because there's so much imagery and so much going on in every scene that it's not hard to pick up on something. And once you've started picking up on things, you just kind of keep doing it. And I think those kinds of movies are pretty important as well.
yep, yep. I mean, again, why I don't use over analyzing in any like derogatory way is because like it's just getting used to it. Right. I got a lot more out of the red spectacles than you and I think it was just Eleanor who watched that film in a group watch. Even though I still didn't get much enjoyment out of it, I
Yeah.
did get a lot of like thematical stuff that you didn't pick up on.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's just getting used to stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes things can also come down to the like external knowledge of
Mm.
things around it. Like you've been talking a bit about how this was post-war
Mm.
Japan, how you know things about Kurosawa that I don't.
Yep.
That can definitely impact some readings of movies. Um, this movie doesn't require that,
Yep.
and that's nice.
That is a good synopsis of the film. That's nice.
That's nice. It's a nice movie. It it's very good at what it does.
Yeah. That's why you should watch it.
Yeah, yeah. I think we would both recommend this movie to pretty much
Yeah.
everyone. Um, I also like the black and white aesthetic.
Yeah, the general like noir feel.
Yeah, yeah. I should watch some more noir as well, but I do know that this like is pretty different from most noir as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's noir inspired. It's not like classic noir,
Yeah.
but you know. Yeah, shall we call it here?
Yeah, I think that's most of what we have to say about the movie. I mean, you can always go on and on for
Yeah,
uh
but we do not want to make long podcasts.
that's true. And also, I think most of it would come down to repeating things we have said in different terms. um, but yeah, um, I suppose we should end it there. That was a podcast about Drunken Angel by Akira Kurosawa. We are going to get back to doing more of these kinds of podcast episodes where we actually talk about movies. There have been a couple obstacles. Aska's been writing thesis papers, just general uni stuff. And then also we've had things that we feel are more appropriate to talk about in our more casual podcasts. But yeah, we're gonna be making more of these. We're gonna have guests hopefully as well. And we are going to get a more structured way of talking about these movies as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you so much for watching or listening, I guess, to the Currently Unnamed podcast. The Currently Anime Movie Podcast, even. I've been Carl, and the other person has been Aska.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. Socials are in the description.
Bye bye.